Watch and burn.
Hey everyone. So tonight I want to discuss, which is probably the most accessible of all of the better known and bigger nuclear war movies from the early to mid 80s. And that is The Day After, starring Steve Guttenberg and a very young John Lithgow. And the reason that I say that this is probably the most accessible is that even though post-blast in this, that things get just as horrific as anything that I've seen in like Threads or When the Wind Blows, or even like the sort of the emotional impact that you find that the nuclear war has on the characters in Testament, I found this one to be the most inviting and sort of the one that rolls off the easiest. Like, it's still very impactful, and it does a very good job of illustrating perfectly just how you do not want a nuclear catastrophe to happen. This has a very mid-1980s American made-for-TV sensibility to it. So I always found this movie to be a little easier to swallow than, say, Threads. I know that Ronald Reagan, who was the president of the United States at the time, saw this on TV, and he was later quoted as saying that this movie played a big part in him deciding to cool the nuclear arms race that was going on in the 80s with the Russians, which is nice. So it means that, you know, films can have a real like impact on society. And it's cool. These filmmakers, they must have been proud of that, because this movie it's still harrowing, and this movie is still incredibly nihilistic, and it's scary as hell. But like I said, it's just something about it that just feels a little more inclusive, I suppose. Like, this movie is like the nuclear war movie you could watch with your family, and Threads is kind of like the one that you don't want to watch with anybody because it just takes things too far. This movie takes things too far as well, but it's just something about it, it's a little more acceptable. And yeah, it tells the story of, oh fuck, what's the name of the family? Can't remember. The Dahlberg family, the farmer and his wife out in middle of nowhere, United States, who have to deal with the horror of survival because they have enough time to get down to the basement where they've set up sort of like a bunker. And it's through that they meet Steve Guttenberg, who is playing a student who's trying to get home, and because they let him in, you know, he sort of becomes friends with them. And once their daughter says, fuck this, I'm not staying down here anymore, and she runs off and upstairs and runs out into the world. And she's like, see, everything's fine. And Steve Guttenberg goes after her. And of course, they're both sucking in massive amounts of radiation, because you shouldn't be on the surface at this point. And all the cows are dead. And she's like, everything's fine up here. And Steve Guttenberg's like, no, it's not. Look at all the fucking cows. They're dead. Get the fuck back downstairs. And her and Guttenberg's character, they both pay such a heavy price for going out early. At the end of the movie, when she's dying after Steve Guttenberg has agreed, because the Dahlbergs have been so good to him, that he's going to take her, because she's getting sicker and sicker from the radiation, he's going to take her and their son, who's lost his eyesight as a result of looking right at the blast as one of them took place. So like one of the missiles touched down, the kid accidentally looked up and separated his retinas from whatever. I think the backs of them, which apparently can happen when you look into something as powerful as a nuclear blast. Which actually, not to be a smartass, this fucking light that I got right here, I swear to God, like when I look right at it, it feels like my eyes are being sucked out of my skull. So I could believe that if that's that powerful, and it's this little fucking thing I got off Amazon, I can imagine what a nuclear weapon would do to your eyesight. Makes good sense. And I have to say that the blast in this is just as sort of like the destruction scene where you see everybody being turned to skeletons. Whereas on one hand, it's very dated in the sense that, like, well, A, it's a made-for-TV movie, so it had a limited budget. And then B, it's really old, so of course things aren't going to age that well. I still have to say, the blast scene in this is still incredibly effective. Just like the blast in Threads is incredibly effective, and the blast in When the Wind Blows is incredibly effective. It's nice that these old movies can still sort of nail the horror of a nuclear holocaust 35, some odd, 40, 35, 40 years after they've been released. I love the blast scene in this when you're seeing everybody get like reduced to like x-rays. And I thought that was a really clever way to tackle this. And again, I pointed this out in my video about threads. I don't even know if that's up yet. Who knows at this point? I'm just so messy with putting these up. But when I was a kid, they had books like this because we were all terrified about nuclear war because of movies like this. And so if you were a kid, you got to read shit like this trying to tell you, no, don't worry about it. It's just the media making this shit up, you know, most likely at least. Which it did, of course, look like they probably were, because once the nuclear war threat had passed, they jumped right into acid rain. Gonna burn the clothes off our body, and then the skin is gonna fall off our bones, and all this bullshit they tried to fucking force down our throats. And then right when that was shutting down, they kicked up the satanic panic nonsense, where, you know, if you listen to Ozzy Osbourne or whatever, you're gonna fucking kill your family. So it went from the media pushing the guaranteed destruction of the world through nuclear war. But once that wore off, fuck it, we've moved on. It got acid rain, gonna burn the flesh off your body. And then when everyone was like, Jesus Christ, acid rain, they were like, okay, but wait, Satan is in the rock music that your kids are listening to. The kid come home with a fucking Wasp record, you're gonna be dead by dawn. That satanic little son of a bitch is out to get you. You need to send him to some place like the Back and Control Center. Oh, I shouldn't have said the Back and Control Center. It's this place that existed back in the 80s. The Tipper Gore and her PMRC friends were totally cool with parents sending kids to, and it was run by a bunch of ex-police officers who were, oh, if the kid came in wearing like a spiked belt, well, that didn't mean that he loved a band. That meant that he was in a gang and he worshipped Satan and he wanted to kill you. So I'm glad that the nuclear war threat wasn't quite as real as at least the Western media was making it out to be. It was scary when I was a little kid because you just don't know. But here it is, 2022, and the 1980s nuclear war never happened. So I'm so tired of the media, especially after COVID. I'm never going to believe anything again. So yeah, so I think I'm going to stop here. Like I said, the day after is probably the most easily accessible, and the sort of like has the most, it's almost, I don't want to say family friendly, but in a sense it kind of has this family friendly vibe to it. And I really liked Steve Guttenberg growing up. He was in the Police Academy movies, and I really liked I liked Mahoney in those, and he was great. And this movie was amazing. It's a lot of fun, in a sense. So thank you so much for hanging out with me while I discussed The Day After. Came out way back when. If you liked this review, like always, don't forget to do something nice for somebody, but I'm going to go because this fucking light burning the retinas out of my head. Have a good night. I just wanted to say thank you for making it through the entire video. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to remind everyone one more time, even though I've probably already done this in the video that you just watched, to please click the like button as well as the subscribe button, because it helps this channel grow. And thank you for hitting like and subscribe, and we will see you guys really soon.